Hello, and welcome to another week of development on this game. Now that we've got the walls and floors implemented, we can start working on other things that are perhaps more interesting. And the first thing I'm going to be doing is I want to get a basic saving and loading system implemented. And the first thing I'm going to do in order to do that is just make an escape menu. Before I do that, I just wanted to point out I did make a mistake in my last video where I was talking about the number of vertices. I had this stats menu open and I was looking at the number of triangles and vertices and I was thinking, yeah, that is high, but if it's 500 by 500, that isn't that many more. But this number is only the number of vertices being rendered. Example, if I zoom in, it gets lower. And if I move over to a blank spot where these tiles have all been optimized already, it drops down. But I'm not actually quite sure how it all works, because there's still a lot loaded. Oh, there we go. See, now they've dropped right down when I'm zoomed in here. When I'm zoomed out and come over here, there's loads. So maybe these aren't all optimized. I thought I had optimized them. If I zoom right in, we're still getting hundreds of thousands. I'll have to look into that because I'm pretty sure I optimized all of these meshes for the blank tiles at least. Maybe I didn't export them. I think I did. But anyway, yeah, let me get on to making this escape menu then. Okay, that wasn't too difficult. It was actually quite fun. Um, what I've done is I've made this simple menu that just got some buttons in it. Just close it there. Although that will need fixing. Oh, I know what I'm doing. I need to set the mode to paused when this is open. But what I actually did on top of that is I made a sort of tracking system that tracks which windows are open. So this counts as a window because it's a new thing. But if I hit escape, that then closes that. So I can just press escape multiple times and it will open that. And then this adds itself to that list. So if the menu's open and I hit escape, it returns to the regular game. So I thought that's quite good. Which means now that this is set up, I need to do the difficult part, which is actually setting up the save system. So I'm going to do that now. Okay, I thought I'd just give a quick update. I've made this new saves list window, and I've just got these fields at the moment where I can retrieve the saves, and then if I click on this one, it loads them. Then I can come into here, create a new name. And then if I click save file, save completed, and then get saves again, it's showing up there. And then if I do display saves again, it's showing up here. So now what I need to do is tie all these functions together with the UI. Okay, so unfortunately I'm not going to be able to finish the save system this week, or even get it to a quote-unquote working point, so I'm just going to explain a little bit while you watch this time-lapse of me cleaning up some more of the meshes for the floor tiles. Now, the way I usually do save systems for the projects I've tried to make in the past is, well, I remember the first time I needed to do the save systems, I was obviously still very new. So I was looking up tutorials and finding videos, and there's obviously different ways to do it. But the way I found that seemed to work was using a binary formatter. So since then, I've essentially just been reusing that same code and just adapting it to work with whatever project I need. But when I'd finished implementing it here, it was really slow. It was taking 10-15 minutes to load and save a file. So I started looking up to see if there was any ways I could improve performance. And I found that even Microsoft themselves recommend that you do not use a binary formatter, which essentially means that the time that I put into creating the save formatting is useless. So I have to start that again. This time I'm going to use the JSON formatting because I found a good tutorial and that seems pretty easy, and that gives me more flexibility as well of where I want to encode all the data. Like I could store some things as readable so that the user could create, like, I don't know, new enemy types or something. That's a possibility that could be available in the future. I'm not going to pursue that yet. I'm just going to get the core things in first. But that's the plan. So I'm going to start working on that. As I said, I'm not going to be able to finish implementing this in time for the video to go up. So I'm just going to have to end this week's video here while I get that working, and then we'll see how far I get before the next video. I may have finished it depending on how easily it goes. I should be able to use some of the code I've got, because one of the main things is you can only serialize certain data types. For example, you can't serialize the entities. So I have to make a new class specifically for the saved data that has similar things like the XY position of a tile, its depth, and all the indexes of the types of floor and walls and such. But they're not actually, there's no entities involved, and then when the data is loaded, that's then used to generate all the entities. But that's going to be where I end off this week's video. Next week, we'll see where we get depending on how the saving goes. I'll have a little think about other things I'd like to accomplish, but we'll see. Hello and welcome to another week of development on my game here. Now, last week we ended on a rather sour note of not being able to get the saving finished, but I made some progress here. So if I click on save file, you won't see anything because it's freezing while it's doing this at the moment, but it's now saving this dungeon as test name, and there you go. That took just under 11 seconds, which is it's pretty slow, but I think that's acceptable amount of time, I think. Now the main issue I still have though is, let's just pause because I've not got it so it reloads it yet when I load a new one in, so I think it spawns everything on top of it. If I click load here, that's going to retrieve all of the saves in the destination folder, and that takes quite a while still. It's not nearly as bad as the 15-20 minutes it was taking before, but this is still pretty slow. Now I do have some things left to do. The save as isn't implemented. There's no way to actually rename the options. I just have to change this manually, so I need to work on that. The other thing I'm going to try, see, there we go, that took 36 seconds. And then let's pick one. Let's try this one. I don't know if I actually did anything in these, but then it takes a while to load because it has to spawn all the entities still. So I would like to add some sort of loading screen maybe. But as I was saying, the main thing I want to do is, see, there's nothing in here. I don't know whether that's because I didn't do anything or because the saving's still not working. Obviously I'll check that. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to see if I can get the retrieving saves method to work on a different thread. That way, when the game is playing, I can retrieve the saves, and then, because every time you load this, it takes ages to get the data. So let me play around with that now. Okay, so I still haven't finished the save and load system, but I thought I would just provide an update here as I go along. It's a bit awkward to do these because there's not really any visual changes, but I have made some decent progress. So this system is the saving system. I do have it working on asynchronous, but I just put it back to regular for the time being while I was testing some other stuff. The main thing I was having issues with was the loading, which is now pretty much instant. So if I change this save name to video save or something, and then save the file, I'll just explain some of the issues I was having. Basically, when it was trying to load the file, it's only about 130 meg, but for the deserialization stuff, that takes a long time. So the open files list is apparently not updating. Oh, yeah, that's an issue. Yeah, but basically it was using so much RAM, and in fact it crashed my computer at one point. And the obvious solution to that would be reduce the amount of data being saved, because I'm saving the... That's not being refreshed. Let me just... Yeah, so it's being saved, but I think if I... But I'm saving every tile and all its data, which is quite large. So obviously I could just say, if the tile information is the default tile, don't save it. But I thought I would first try and adjust the issue for large saves. There we go. Because in the grand scheme of things, if you did have information in all of those, that would be the size of the save file. But the trick around it is I actually have two parts to a save. There's the save data, which contains all the information for the dungeon, and then there's the save information, which is just the save name and the last played information at the moment. It'll probably have some other things such as user preferences and such. But that file is only a kilobyte, so as you saw, it loads pretty much instantly. Yeah, I'll work on this. That's not working properly. But the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fix the save as, because that's a necessary feature for the game. Then I'll see, depending on how that goes. Obviously, I've got to fix this as well. We'll see how the problem solving goes. Okay, so I have the save as working. I also fixed the menu issue. Basically, I hadn't called the right function on the close. I can do save as. If I type a name that already exists, save, it goes red and it won't let me save. But if I just do that, I can do save as. It'll take a while to save it. I might add some sort of loading indicator, but we'll see. Runs through, there we go, that's saved. And now if we go on to load, you go, new file is created. So the next thing to do, well, I was debating what to do in the last clip, but I realized I haven't actually implemented loading properly. Basically, at the moment, it copies all the data through, but it doesn't actually do anything with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it so it goes through all the tiles. If it's not at the 0 level and isn't the default tile, then delete everything in the tile and spawn new stuff. That way, that should save a lot of performance because it's not having to delete every single entity and spawn every entity. But I don't know how long that's going to take. So this may be the end of the video. If not, I'll be back once I've finished that. Okay, that was actually pretty successful. So if I just start the game up, I'll get the loading going because it takes a while. But as you can see, on startup now, it generates a dungeon, and then when loading, it just goes through and sees what needs to be updated compared to the new data. Now, to be fair, I haven't actually tested loading a file when an existing file is open. I don't see why that shouldn't work. See, here we go. So it's now loaded in the file I had. So why don't we actually try making some changes now and see what happens. So let's just make a 3x3 here, and then let's just save it as something new so I can check. Let's just save that. Although thinking about it now, that's not gonna work. I think let's just try. Let's try that. If I try loading this again, let's just see what's gonna happen. But even if this doesn't work, this is gonna be where I end this week. Unfortunately, it's pretty boring to look at because there's not a lot of visual things related to the saving system. So that's that. Okay. Well, that's good and bad. It updated the tiles, but not the walls. So that is definitely an issue. That's probably just an issue with checking what to update, because obviously if it's updating the tiles, I don't know, I'll look through. But I'm happy with the progress I've made. It was definitely slower than I wanted it to be. But yeah, and like I said, it's not very visually interesting. It's a lot of just going through, converting data to different types, and then saving it. And I had to relearn stuff. That's part of the reason it took so long. Like, in reality, it's a pretty basic save system. The only thing left that I'd quite like to add is I'll put a refresh saves button maybe. So what if you've got this open, you can just click that and get all the saves again. And then I need to do something with save validation. So if I go into the where all the data's stored and I just delete one, let's delete video save. I've now deleted that. This file doesn't exist anymore. Now if I try and open this, I don't actually know what happens. It shouldn't load because I've got checks for the data itself. So there we go. It did say loading, but that's just the start and end. It wouldn't have actually done anything with that because there's no data. So if we go in here, that needs refreshing. So yeah, that's something that needs to be worked on, but that's not a major issue because people shouldn't really be doing that. So that's an edge case. It's not a pressing issue. Now next week, I'm going to make a start with spawning the character entities. And I've had some thoughts about that. So I'll go over that in the next video. Another thing I've also decided that I might try and start doing at the start of the week, I'll try and write down some objectives to do. Because like you saw earlier in this video, I had some times where I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do. So I think that's probably a good thing to start doing. Hello and welcome to another week of game development. Now last week I managed to get the save system working, and that's going to make the next step a lot easier to test, and that step is going to be spawning entities. So that's the enemies that will be in the dungeon as well as the adventurers. So to start off with, I'm going to do what I planned to do at the end of last week, and that's outline the core features that I want to include. I'm going to get started on that now. Okay, so I've outlined some basic things that I think are related to the entities. So spawning an entity at a set position, then moving an entity to a set position, spawning an entity with stats, just sort of health, speed, defense, and attack, then giving them weapons, destroying the entity at 0 health, and giving the entity an objective. I guess I should also pathfinding on. Didn't specify that. Then we've got possible things. These are things that I'd like to add but aren't required. To sort of, if there's a harvesting system, that would be quite good. I thought maybe they could rest to recover stamina, although I haven't put that as a required stat. And then the hopeful things are things that I'd like to include but are pretty low priority. So sort of before implementing these, I'd move on to a new feature and put required things in. And I've only got a grouping at the moment. So that's sort of like actually moving as a team rather than being individual entities. So I guess I'm just going to start implementing some of these features. Okay, so unfortunately I haven't been able to I haven't been very productive this week, but I have managed to get it so I can spawn an entity. Press the G key, spawns an entity. This is at a predetermined position at the moment. I've just got it set to 1-1 on the grid, and then if I press H, it moves to 4-4. Everything's indexed, so this is 0-0. But yeah, that's all that does. If I press G again, it will just spawn another one. If we go into the entity hierarchy here, and I keep pressing it, you'll see it spawn a bunch. So that's that done. I definitely would have liked to get more done. I haven't spent a lot of time on the game this week. What I'm gonna be working on next is I need to make entity spawners, because at the moment this is just a general script where if I press G it spawns a new entity. What I actually need to do is have it so you place a spawner at a tile, and then given certain conditions, that then spawns. So I have to think about that. Oh, another thing, if I go into any mob here, if you come here, there's a mob stat thing, so it has health, speed, attack, defense. These are just preset values at the moment, so that will also need variation to it. Those are things to work on, but as I said, I haven't spent much time on the game this week, unfortunately. Hopefully next week I'll pick up a bit and I can get some more progress. Hello and welcome to another week of game development. And to kick this week off, I'm going to start by making a placeable mob spawner that the player can interact with. That should make testing easier. Okay, I thought I'd jump in and give a quick update. I've got it to the point where you can place a spawner, but it's not finished yet because something I realized is to get this working, I actually have to make the building system. So just placing all the other objects I have to get working. So this isn't fully finished yet because I need to sort out to get the UI working properly. But I now have it so that I can make new objects. So if I go in here, I can then create a decorative object which just has the default type of decoration and then a model for it. And then I have a data field here, but probably get rid of that because I don't think I actually need that. And then I'm also going to add a name. The other thing I can do is if I create a spawner, this is a subset of the decoration type. So you can see it's got the same fields, but then additionally it has a mob. So you give it the game object and that's the type of mob it will spawn. And then the maximum number of spawns and the cooldown. Some of these might change, but that's how that works. But before I go any further with getting the spawners working, I'm just going to go ahead and get the building system working better now because I've started on it. It probably makes more sense to just finish it now than to put it off until later. So let me get on with that. Okay, that's now implemented better. So if I switch over to this and then click, I'm using a default icon for now. But if I press, it does it once. And if I hold shift, I can place multiple. And these auto-populate. We go into build and then decorations. Start. So it's now really easy to put a bunch of different models in the game if I want. So I'm pretty happy about that. Apparently there's still an issue with placing when we're over UI, so oh yeah, that's easy. I just forgot to put the check in for the build mode. That's that sorted. Now, next thing I am going to do is work on actually putting some data to these spawners. I will get on with that. Alright, I've got that working, and I'm pretty happy with the progress so far. There's a few quirks, such as at the moment, if I try and place a spawner, it doesn't work. If I move my cursor out of bounds and then go back in bounds. There we go, so that spawns. And then, as it counts down, pop, a mob spawns. And after a certain amount of time, new one spawns. And again, new one spawns. And let me adjust this max spawns to 5. Oh, I can't do that apparently. But I do have the max spawn thing tested. Okay, that's sorted. The issue was that when this is clicked, it turns off, it disables that game object, which doesn't register as the cursor leaving it. So I just had to manually set that, and now I can place immediately. And that creates a spawner. Now I've limited it to 3 mobs. So after the 3 it should stop. If we wait, it shouldn't spawn anymore. Okay, so that hasn't spawned anymore, so that's good. But I'm having an issue at the moment where none of the entity data is showing up, and I think that's just a bug. So I'll probably have to restart. Yeah, that hasn't switched back. There we go. So now what happens if we go into build mode and place that down? Yeah, that's not exactly what I intended to happen. So that will need working on. So I'll fix that. But other than that, I think the next thing I'll be doing is starting to implement path finding for entities. And one, I can't do that while this is broken, so I'll have to restart Unity anyway. But that should fix it. If it doesn't, though, I have no idea what I'll do. But pathfinding is probably going to take a while, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to finish it this week. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to have a go at making some more variants, because I'm fed up with everything being grey here. Looks like my primary thing should be fixing all these UI issues, though. So I will have a go at that. Alright, that's fixed. It was nowhere near as bad as I thought it might have been. Basically, when I was switching these, I was toggling the game objects themselves rather than running the function I've got that calculates all the windows. And while I was doing that, I updated the buttons just to make it a bit clearer what you're on. I'll probably change the colouring still. And then the other thing I did is I made 2 new floor types. We have this dirt floor here, and it's just 2 different colours with some noise between them, and you can obviously play with that. And then the other one is grass, and at the moment that's just a solid colour. So that needs some work on it probably. I'm not entirely sure what I want to do though, because I don't really want to just make it a gradient. I might do that for the time being. Oh, I should also say I fixed the positioning on the spawners. So now it spawns, it places the tile at the correct position. That's good. So this month has been so-so. We had a lot of issues. I can't actually remember what I started the month with. I just remember having a series of weeks where I didn't get much done, but I'm pretty happy with this amount this week. And then next week we'll be able to jump into trying to get pathfinding set up. We'll see how that goes. So I think that's where we're going to call it this week and for this month. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.